Amazing Race Casuals, Phil and Will are back to break down episode 4 of the Amazing Race 31, in which nothing I said last week came true, and Will is probably about to rant for a solid 10 minutes. But Chris and Brett are still alive. Poor Corinne and Eliza are gone. I'm very devastated by that. Well, Will, overall, what did you think, especially about the first 5 minutes of the Amazing Race episode 4?
I mean, this has been my big issue kind of with the whole show, where it feels like some stuff just doesn't matter. Where episode to episode, the team that gets first place and the team that gets, one position off from last place, they've had really no difference. There's been no advantage. And yeah, the first place team gets like a Travelocity cruise or a vacation of some sort. I love Travelocity. We got to keep plugging Travelocity. They showed up again this episode. But what if you're Nicole and Victor, probably my favorite team besides Brett and Chris at this point, now that Kurt and Eliza are gone, and you keep getting second place, and you're starting the race at the same time as the team that, was on the brink of elimination or should have been eliminated in the case this week. So from that standpoint, it is frustrating. I'm still enjoying the show. And if you don't want to hear me rant about how this really makes no sense, then you can probably skip ahead 10, 15 minutes. So imagine, I do want to get into this because it is frustrating as a viewer, at least for me, to see how episode 3, I mean, you can try to tell me Phil, you want to take on devil's advocate or if this is what you believe. But in my opinion, episode 3 did not matter to this show. Now, did they do entertaining challenges? Was it fun to watch? Absolutely. But did it have any meaning on the actual race? I'm going to go out and say no. It had zero influence on the race. There are a lot of variables at play. I think the most frustrating thing for me this episode in particular was that, again, we start the episode with these starting times, and I'm really excited about it. We had starting times, I think, in the second episode, and that really got me going. I love these starting times. I love the gaps in between the legs because I think that it's a culmination. It's one big long race instead of a bunch of individual ones. And we get these starting times, and then they get their clue. They have a place they're going. I'm pumped. Team Fun arrives, and the place isn't open until 6:30. We have another equalizer after a non-elimination leg. They wait till 6:30. Chris and Brett are there. Like, they're there with everyone waiting. So this is an equalizer again, just like the monk thing. I think there was even an equalizer in the last episode. I forget. It seems like there always has been one. And it is frustrating to me. I think they are, for the sake of entertainment, just making everyone on an even playing field so that anybody can win and that, the loser isn't predetermined. But I think it really, Chris and Brett got 5th place this week. Woohoo. I'm glad they're still in the game. But I don't think it could have been way more meaningful.
Whoa, wait a second. Chris and Brett got 3rd place this week, Mr.
Third place. All right, yeah. They got 3rd place.
They got 3rd place. But I will say, and
that would have been so cool if they actually had something to overcome. I feel like they had very little to overcome. We have not gotten to the speed bump yet, which I can also have my issues with. So if you want to go ahead and give me your thoughts on all.
Yeah,
this.
let me just say something here. So first of all, I do agree with you. I hate that there was an equalizer there. They left at 2:47 a.m. Nicole and Victor left at 3:36. It's a 49-minute lead. That means nothing. So they had a 49-minute lead just on that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the thing is that they list out these times as if they are going to have meaning. If you're going to equalize it, just do the monk thing or put it right in my face and say, you know what, Will, we're equalizing this week. But to put these start times up and have them all frantic, like, okay, we're starting. And I'm tracking them. I'm writing down these times. We have 2:47, 3:36, 3:46, 4:06, 4:19. This is awesome. But then they just get equalized. And it's like, why are you even showing us these start times?
Yeah, I agree. Also, right now, somebody in the chat, somebody explained to me, because I'm looking up the placement and everything like that and how it differed. What is a head-to-head? An orange plus next to a leg number indicates that there was a head-to-head on that leg of the race, while an orange minus indicates the team that lost the final head-to-head and was eliminated. What does that mean? Because the minus is next to Corinne and Eliza. Did they go head-to-head against Rachel Riley?
What are you talking about?
I'm just looking up. I'm so lost. No, I'm just on
What are you reading from?
I'm on Wikipedia because I'm looking at the positions, and suddenly there's a head-to-head thing, and I didn't know that existed. Anyway, somebody else can figure that out because I don't know what that means. But going back to your point, and sorry if I completely miss it, but I do think that in older seasons, if you had a continuation, like, it mattered a lot more. And like, I was happy, like exactly what I said with like, they stay in Vietnam, there's no plane, so there's no way that like you can all do that. I like that. Like, it should all be in, if it's a continuation, like it should stay in the one spot. But to not have Team Fun get any type of advantage in this, like, makes no sense. They have no advantage. And they ended up finishing what they finished. They finished fourth place, behind Chris and Brett. By the time Chris and Brett were done with the speed bump, they were already ahead of Team Fun. They were in fifth place after completing the speed bump, and Team Fun was behind them.
Yeah, and I really think this makes episode 3 completely useless in terms of the game. Now you can argue, well, we got to see them dance and they caught prawns, and I agree those were fun, but they lose all their meaning. And I think you can even draw a comparison. I don't know if anyone is watching the final season of Game of Thrones, but it seems like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but this season it seems like they're just valuing these set pieces and battles and showdowns and big moments over what makes sense. There's not a lot of logical sense coming out in this Game of Thrones season. If you've been on the internet at all, you've probably heard this. And it feels similar to me, where we have these fun events, but like it's not cohesive. It doesn't make sense as a race. And it is kind of frustrating. I would have loved to see Chris and Brett have a disadvantage at the start, have a speed bump that was actually a speed bump and was difficult, and then still overcome it and survive. Even if they don't place third, what if they place seventh and they survive and they move on, and then maybe we equalize next week because we just had a 2-stage leg. So I don't know. It's a frustrating thing, and I still enjoy this episode. It's not like I'm not stop watching the show, but it doesn't make much sense to me.
Now say that about Game of Thrones now too, because like bringing that up, we could have an entire argument about this, and Will always texts me afterwards nitpicking every single thing that happened in a Thrones episode, and I normally just ignore it. So he's bringing this up for sure to try to get me heated, and he knows
I'm not trying
what
to get you heated. Game of Thrones hasn't been as good, and I think it's a lot because they are just trying to have exciting, entertaining moments that don't make sense. And I feel like this is a good comparison with The Amazing Race for episodes 3 and 4, where you have a race that meant nothing in episode 3. And it's not like this is a problem that can't be solved. This is simply have that store be open. Like you obviously are booking that store. You can decide when it opens. Like that, no one is seriously thinking, oh darn, the place where the challenge is doesn't open until 6:30 a.m. What a bummer. It's like, no, that was done explicitly. That was done on purpose. And what I'm saying is that doesn't have to be the case. And we can get into the rest of the episode. I'm just saying it makes very little sense to me when you're in a race to have a leg of a race mean nothing.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. And I don't know why it was like that. I like really can't put a finger on it. I can't even defend it. So I'm not going to try to. So I'll just that's why you just had free reign there, because I knew it bothered you a lot, because you love like the game element of these types of things. So to see something like that where it just is useless, like if you're creating a board game and you have an element that's useless, that board game doesn't get published. So I totally understand where your frustration is coming from right now, because there was no reason.
And that's the aspect of these shows that we both like to talk about. So, I mean, Survivor is way more gamey, and we're trying to talk about the strategy and the decisions. But then it's like it was all for nothing for a whole episode. It makes it hard to care about any sort of gameplay and decision-making when you have some parts of this race be completely useless.
Yeah, and I won't even say it's useless, though, because what it really does is it puts a bigger target on Team Fun, because they won by so much. And, you know, Victor and Nicole, they keep getting second place. It's the third time now that they finished second place. People might look at them as a threat, But you're looking at Team Fun as a bigger threat because they've actually won a leg, and they didn't just win a leg. They won that leg by 50 minutes and then still come in fourth place this week, despite being one of the last teams to find a taxi. So, yeah, the one thing it really did do was make Team Fun look like a huge, huge threat. But that's all it did. That's the only thing. And it was funny to watch Chris and Brett make snowballs, I guess. But that's all they had to do. Like, that didn't take time.
Yeah, let's tackle this speed bump here. I did think there were some great parts of this that I really liked. I really liked the polar bear, and it was taunting them, and they were, kind of became friends with this polar bear by the end of it. They gave the polar bear a hug after it. He was judging the quality of their snowballs. We get them saying that this isn't really snow, it's more like ice. They're talking about the frostbite. I don't really need all that. Like, yeah, it's going to be cold. My biggest problem with this speed bump was that the place they needed to deliver this cooler to was where the roadblock was.
Agreed.
And it's like all the other teams need to do that anyway. So having Chris and Brett deliver something to where all the other teams are going, that's not adding anything. That's already part of the race. The only thing that was added was making like 25 to 30 snowballs. And I mean, it's when I'm thinking about this as a new watcher, when I have an episode where they were supposed to be eliminated. I mean, let's be real. The team that gets in last is supposed to be eliminated, save for like 2 or 3 episodes a season. That's kind of what I've picked up. And whatever that punishment that they give this team that's supposed to be eliminated should be, I mean, pretty equal. It should have some weight that is equal to getting eliminated, where it's like, damn, if we're going to have to do this, this is going to, really hurt us. And making snowballs and then delivering it to the same place where every other team already needs to go, that's not enough for me. And again, I love Chris and Brett. They're my favorite team in this. I'm pulling for them. Super glad they're still in the race. How much more awesome would it be as Chris and Brett fans for them to have to start with a disadvantage, do some really tough tasks, and then still pull out the win? That's what would be meaningful.
Yeah, that's what it used to be.
Awesome.
I'm pretty sure that's how it used to be. And yeah, that was my biggest problem too, is that they were going to the same location. I was hoping that if you have to make these snowballs, you have to deliver them somewhere else within here. You have to find somebody, do something. And even if it's only something that takes them 10 minutes out of their way, at least it's taking them 10 minutes out of the way. Because while they were making snowballs, everybody else is trying to find a taxi, and trying to find a taxi in an area that you're not familiar with when you have no idea where it's going. I mean, when did Corey and Tyler, did they ever find a taxi? Like it took them forever to find that taxi. So yeah, Chris and Brett, they had to do something else. But this is also why a show like Survivor will never do Celebrity Survivor. And this is why like a show like when you have these elements of like, we're going to do a crossover between The Amazing Race, Big Brother, and Survivor, I feel like you're not getting the purest form of the show, because it's almost like you're getting new watchers. And so it almost becomes a little sillier. And I feel like this on Wednesday night was silly. Like them making the snowballs and being taunted by a polar bear was like, oh, look how cute it is. And I could almost imagine that in like Celebrity Survivor, where like you have a bunch of celebrities and it's like, oh, look, they're doing a silly challenge. And oh, isn't it so funny to watch silly person do silly challenge? Like that's what it feels like to me. And you're not getting the purest form of like, we're grinding it out to win this. I mean, how many times did Rick Devens say on the last episode of Survivor, I'm grinding, I'm working harder than everybody? Nobody said that on The Amazing Race tonight, because that's not like the way that this season is being played. This season is being played more as like, I would almost be like mad if I was an Amazing Race team, because it feels like it's being played as like a joke. It feels like it's being played way too lighthearted.
Right. And I think just to add to your point, I agree with you. This might have something to do with, we have these Big Brother players, these Survivor players, and then Amazing Race players, and we have to keep it fun, light, silly, simple, or else the Amazing Racers would have too big of an advantage. If this is a real hardcore version of the Amazing Race, like a full-blown out season, which I still don't know what that looks like, then it might just be the Amazing Race people winning every leg. And I mean, we're kind of close to that already. So I see what you're saying. And I don't mind the silliness. I actually love the silliness. I've loved the dancing and the language. And I mean, all these challenges I've really liked, but I want them to have more meaning. And it's because I like them so much that I want them to have meaning. And I think adding meaningness to very silly activities it's cool. That's like you have to do this really silly thing, like sing karaoke or whatever, but you're in a race for $1 million. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
When it's let's do silly things and just, okay, everyone's going to start the race at the same time and the game is kind of cheapened a little bit, that's where I kind of have my concerns.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm saying
we can move past this too.
What I'm saying to you
maybe
is
someone skipped right to here when they skipped.
So we're at like the 15-minute mark. We'll give a timestamp for that so people can enjoy themselves. But I will say to you, early seasons. Like if you're going to watch this, go watch early seasons. And I know that that's really funny because I'm telling the guy who always tells me early Survivor seasons are boring compared to later Survivor seasons. Now I'm also telling you like, hey, early Amazing Race is much better than late Amazing Race. And I mean that there's not like U-turns and things like that right away, but it's very interesting to watch. And the Flo and Zach challenge was actually tonight. It was a different version of it, but that was when Brett and Chris are in the giant, like whatever that is, the circle thing. Flo and Zach do a version of that in the Amazing Race Season 3. I'm telling you, please watch the Amazing Race Season 3. It is so good. It's so good. It is so good. And you'll get a good grasp of like
I want to maintain my casuality.
You can maintain
amazing. I don't want to be I don't want to get close to being a specialist or even
trust me, you won't be, because that is
an associate specialist.
That's like saying you're a specialist because you can explain why Jenna Maraska won Survivor. Like if you like that, like watching Jenna Maraska win Survivor, and that's the only season of Survivor that you watch, that doesn't really give you an input into like why people normally win Survivor. And that is literally the Amazing Race Season 3. But so I'm telling you, if you're going to do that, if you want to see a real version of the Amazing Race, that's the season.
Yeah. I don't want to, I feel like if I watch one season and then come on here next week or the week after or whenever, and I'll just compare everything to one season. And there'll be a little bit of a recap of season 5 as well as a recap of season 31. So I like where I'm at. I like the novelty of all this stuff. Let's get into these elements of the race in this episode. I thought this was definitely the weakest challenge-wise for me.
Yeah, the challenges weren't exciting. Like I said, the only reason I got excited was because it was the Flo and Zach challenge. And we got to watch like Brett sit there while Chris paddled all masculinely. And the two of them are just like, oh yeah, this is, it was funny, whatever. Also, if anybody's a fan of Crash Bandicoot, the series, go and look up Tiny the Tiger from Crash Team Racing. It is literally Chris on that motorbike. It's in like a little go-kart, but the tiger is gigantic and all muscle and everything and like barely fits, and it just like takes up half the screen. That is Chris on this motorcycle. It's just like he's so massive compared to everybody else who's doing it. But yeah, I thought that the motorcycle challenge, for as fun as it was to watch Eliza literally have a mental breakdown because it brought me back to Vanuatu, it's like not exciting. It's like if you've ridden a motorcycle without an automatic transmission, you're going to win this leg. If you haven't, you're going to lose this leg. And that's what we saw. Like, why would Eliza, who has lived her entire life in New York City, ever be able to do this?
Yeah, this was we can also go back to the very first challenge after, but I didn't have too big of a problem with this one, especially because all these shots of Ho Chi Minh City with these mopeds everywhere. I did like it was, using the culture of the city, which I'm a big fan of. I think that's why the Amazing Race has been on so long. It really does a good job of introducing people to these unique places and cities. And then the first challenge, they run up a snow slide into a polar bear, which I don't know what cultural relevance that had. And it wasn't much of it was a race, I guess, but it was quick, small. I guess it was fun because there's a polar bear, but it seemed
Brittany took it out. Brittany just destroyed that polar bear,
which was awesome.
Yeah,
but that seemed very out of place. But
and this goes back to kind of what you were saying at the beginning, though. Like there was no reason to equalize them this time. They could have just went over to getting on the motorcycles and doing the figure 8. And like, they could have just been like, hey, keep this open so that everybody can do it starting at like 4 a.m. Like, we'll just keep it open. But like to have them wait to go in there, literally to just get on a sled, ride down the sled, grab something from polar bear, and then try to get a taxi to go somewhere else, it's useless.
It felt like they equalized into another equalizer where it's like sliding down a hill requires no skill, no thought. Everyone will be able to do it within, a matter of seconds. I'm sure they had, okay, you can't have this many people going at once, but okay, one team goes, the team that's in last place, they're going to be like, what, a minute behind? Like you're not going to make up time. You're not going to build a lead on this first polar bear slide, as silly as the polar bear was. It felt like it was just there in order to keep Brett and Chris there longer and make snowballs.
But this even goes to what you were saying, though, too. Why not just have Chris and Brett have to go there? Everybody else goes somewhere else. Chris and Brett go there, make the snowballs, and then go meet up with everybody later on, and nobody else goes to this part. So at least Chris and Brett are diverting from the regular course, and then they drop them off at the place where they're going, which is fine with me because they had to go somewhere differently than everybody else.
Yeah, I think the big reason why they don't do this, they want some sort of action on this start, whatever it is. I don't know if they want to start necessarily, okay, take a taxi to your, you know what I mean? Like they need, because they have the roadblock and the detour. It seems like every episode, we did see the order change on those for this episode. And then they have some little gimmick. It just seems like they don't want to go right into that. But I agree with you. It would be funny if Chris and Brett had to slide down this hill and then run into a polar bear. And then this was like their little side mission.
Yeah.
Instead, again, it felt like, what was the point of all this? If they're just everyone's going to finish pretty much at the same time and then get a taxi. Regarding the taxi, I think Team Fun really had the best idea here. They had someone, a local, use their cell phone to call a cab. And, someone might say, you don't want to wait for a cab, but okay, if you find one in the meantime, who cares? There's no loss here. I mean, might not be the morally best thing to do, but you're racing for $1 million here. So I don't think you're thinking about a cab driver's time. So I thought that was very smart by them.
Yeah, and it didn't work out for them the best because they ended up starting a little bit in like the middle of the pack, but it worked out for them a lot better than like Corey and Tyler, Janelle and Brittany. Who else got?
I mean, that's hard.
It's hard. No, absolutely. When you have that many in there, it's hard enough to find one in like LA.
That's what I was gonna say. I remember before Uber and Lyft and all these ride sharing, I would be, after I went to like a baseball game in San Francisco, and finding a cab not easy. When I speak the language, when I have my phone with me.
You ready? Miami near the University of Miami.
That was
2010 to 2014. Also, glad Uber put all those taxi companies out of business because they all deserved it. They were awful.
Oh my gosh, they were
awful.
I mean, just going to the airport, like I would call a cab and then
they'd show up an hour later.
And it's just like, no, like this is not okay.
Anybody who's listening to this, send this message out to the Miami taxi companies because screw them. They ruined so many people's like events, flights, everything. Like you had to call 15 minutes if it's in the area. What the hell does that mean? But anyway, back to being in Vietnam, because I could go on and on about Miami taxis for days.
You're completely right. I mean, you forget about the pre-Uber and Lyft days. It was a pain.
Yeah. Especially when you had people who are as just ignorant as half the people in that city. Wow. But anyway, love Miami. Go Hurricanes. Screw the taxi companies. But more importantly, this is very hard. And you have, who else was stuck with them? There were 3 teams, weren't there, that were really far behind?
Seems like Janelle and Brittany had trouble finding one.
Tyler and Corey, and who's the other one?
It seemed like there were very few teams that found it easily. I think Colin and Christy found a cab pretty easily.
Brett and Chris found it really easily too, because they were out of there in 5th place. Like they ran out the door in 5th place.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but then they all get over to so then we get to this motorcycle challenge. Colin got it on his first try. Watching Chris go, why did Chris not get it on his first try?
I think it's more a matter of you can know how to ride a moped. You could probably take someone who's a resident of Ho Chi Minh who has a moped of their own, say, do this course, stay in the lines, and they might fail their first time. Like, this is a very specific...
I'm asking you what Chris did wrong. I did not see him do anything wrong, and he like was going over the bumps. It looked like he got to the end, and it was just like boop, and I was like, wait,
he was going over the bumps, and he had to put his foot touch the ground.
Oh, I didn't see his foot touch the ground. I thought his foot touched the ground after he was done.
Okay. Now I'm just looking at my my notes here because I do remember it seemed like
he made it.
It seemed like Leo and Jamal, when they made it, that I saw their bike cross the line during their run. Same with Janelle and Brittany.
Yeah.
So that was. It seemed like they were kind of hard. Sometimes they were hard on these rules. Sometimes they weren't. Who knows if that was just editing, where they did get it cleanly and they were just showing they had better footage or coverage of an earlier attempt. This is just. I'm just looking at my notes now, and we have Leo and Jamal say, we went from first to last, or we went from last to first.
Yeah.
Exclamation point. That was just a huge eye roll from me, and we've already gotten to the reasons why. But
they know how to get their screen time. It just goes back to that.
We went from first to last. That, like, so frustrating, because if you're gonna equalize it, put it in my face, but don't pretend that this team made this big comeback and wow, first to last or last to first.
One thing I wanted to talk about, though, I wanted to bring this up while you were complaining about it, and I totally forgot. I like Team Fun's reaction to the whole shit we're about to be equalized. The line of, that's okay, I guess we can juggle. Thought that was absolutely fantastic. Like, that's what they're like. You're like, I'm over here like frustrated. You're over there frustrated. And Team Fun's like, we're going to practice juggling. And like, I could just imagine them doing that. I just thought that was a fantastic line. So as you're talking about going from last to first, I just wanted to throw that in there one more time.
Last to first. Wow, you guys really stepped it up.
Yeah,
good on them.
Well, that's even like Brett and Chris getting third place in this leg. Like, they're like, wow, like Phil's like, you did a great job, and they did do a great job running the leg. Like, let's not beat around the bush here. Like, Brett and Chris ran a great leg.
They did.
But they also started on even terms with everybody else.
Yeah, when they literally could have been eliminated last week.
Yeah.
We don't need to dwell on this anymore. I mean, it's going to keep coming up. Yeah. So overall, again, this is one of those ones where you have the teams waiting to go, which I'm not opposed to, but in general, I think it's more fun. I mean, if they just had to drive a moped and race on a course where they're all, cutting each other off and bumping into each other, maybe that's not safe. Definitely it doesn't sound safe,
funny,
but something I would definitely enjoy watching. And again, I like this one for the cultural implications. There really wasn't any exciting moments. Like, there wasn't a make or break point. It's like, okay, they do it, and then they just cut to them driving over the bumps, and they've completed it.
Yeah, and it's pretty much like just the only exciting part of this was watching Eliza break down. I mean, that was really the only good part, and I feel for Eliza. I mean, this is one of those challenges, like, I would be terrible at it. I've never ridden a motorcycle. I've never ridden a moped. Like, I'd be terrible at this. But, like, it's fun. Like, it's just, like, this is Eliza on Survivor coming out now in this. And I loved, like, their little feud with Rachel and Alyssa throughout the entire episode. And then it ends up being between those two teams at the end of the episode. So I thought this was, like, a good setup for that. And, like, how Eliza and Karim are just like, why aren't we better than everybody else? So I thought that was good. But yeah, overall, it's just like they were moving on. But to your point of them like racing against each other, we do kind of see that in the Detour this week when everybody hops in. And I guess that was Irrigation, where they're all paddling and you're racing against each other because you're all on the same course with other people kind of in the way. Back to Crash Bandicoot. It reminded me of a Crash Bandicoot level. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. So first challenge, nothing too exciting. Teams just kind of got out of there. That was really
and I think this reminded me of our discussion about calmness last week, how Eliza was not calm whatsoever. She was freaking out that she wasn't winning, and that's not going to help you win. That's not going to help you complete the roadblock. And in this situation, as bad as you are, you like standing and hugging Corinne, like that's just wasting time.
Yeah.
That's just time. I mean, keep trying. At least if you're trying, there's a chance you get it, and you'll get better each time you do it. You'll, feel out the balance. You'll learn the course. But to just take a moment to just, I guess gather yourself, whatever, if you're really that stressed. But this is something I think amazing racers who have had this experience, they've probably learned there's no reason to get angry. And that's why Colin and Christy, right. Colin and Christy, they they won this leg and they stay calm and they learn that. It seemed like in their first season, that's kind of their story. They used to be the hotheads, at least Colin was. And now it's like, let's relax. Let's just try it again and figure it out. So
no, I think that's spot on. If you look at the teams who were in the top, I mean, Chris and Brett, they stayed calm this whole time. Becca and Floyd are never flustered. Colin and Christy, Nicole and Victor are running a fantastic race right now. And I think like those top 4 teams, those are the 4 calmest teams. And yeah, Leo and Jamal, they're real cool, but they're not like calm, but they can calm themselves down, whatever they need.
Calmness is not an opposite for energetic. You can be energized, enthusiastic, and calm at the same time. You can be hyped up. It's just it's that head game where as you mentioned, Rachel really was like freaking out, worrying about like what's going to happen if you lose, where it's like, that's not contributing anything. I guess she was at least arguing, hey, let's switch here.
Yeah, which we can talk about because
let's get into this roadblock or what was it? Detour.
So this detour, I would have definitely just done the paddle one. You just got to go. Like, you just do it. It's something that you just get through it, especially if like you and I were running this race. We're such muscular men. We'd be able to pick that up and throw that over the top of that bridge. No problem. The other thing's too tedious. And Rachel was 100% right when talking to Alyssa, saying like, we need to go and do the other thing. We're not getting this. It's taking us way too long. I don't know why my roommate's walking in the door at 2:30 in the afternoon, but we're doing this, and she was right. And Alyssa, for some reason, just wouldn't listen to her. And I don't understand why. Like, why did Alyssa not just be like, okay, you're right. Like, let's keep retying this. We haven't figured it out. How many times did they call that guy over before they actually like got it right? It had to have been 5 times before they even were able to start filling water into their bucket.
Yeah, I don't know what this one. I kept thinking, like, when I was watching it, I wasn't thinking Rachel is right. I was thinking, okay, Rachel, chill out. Why couldn't they just look at Leo and Jamal's? Is that not allowed? That was my first thought. You literally not only have someone who's completed it, you have the full one built, 30 yards away?
But also, you're watching a lot of teams go and do the paddling thing and do it very quickly. Like, they'd seen enough teams by that point when they were trying their 4th or 5th time, whatever it was. You're seeing all these other teams go back and forth. They're coming back with their fish. They're coming back with their fish. They're coming back with their fish. And you start to say, like, why are we doing this one? This one's taking longer. Even Leo and Jamal, who did it well, it took them way longer than it took anybody else to do the other one. So I understand where Rachel was coming from. She just doesn't know how to convey what she's saying in a calm demeanor.
I don't know. Because for me, it's like, okay, if I've done, and we talked about this last week a little bit with like Chris and Brett in the dancing, when I was saying Chris and Brett should have known a little bit earlier, hey, this dancing is not their thing, just when they were practicing it and learning it, not even before their first attempt, but just they got to know this isn't our thing. They can't say, okay, we've rehearsed it. Let's give it a try when you're not going to succeed. And maybe they thought they could, but that was what I was saying last week. But this, I think, is different because this they've made progress on. This isn't something that is completely unsalvageable, and they ended up doing it. It's not like they were drawing dead.
But they barely did it before Corinne and Eliza were there, and Corinne and Eliza were so far behind.
I know, but I think it's like, again, I want to know, why can't they just look at Leo and Jamal's and say, okay, let's make it look exactly like this, or go look at the sample one.
They were looking at the sample, and that's why I would have changed, because it's so tedious that there could be something you're just missing that you're not realizing. And when you're paddling, you're just paddling. And it seemed like even if you fell out of that boat, you just picked it up and started from where you fell. You didn't have to go back to the start. So nobody had trouble paddling those things. You might have spun a little bit at the beginning, but then you were just going. This other thing, like, they weren't realizing their mistake, and they kept looking at the sample, and they couldn't figure out, that their bamboo shoot was touching the top of the pot, things like that. So I do think that they should have switched way sooner, because they got there in 3rd place, 4th place, and they ended up leaving there barely ahead of Corinne and Eliza. And actually, from the way it was edited, I thought Corinne and Eliza had passed them.
Yeah. This one's tough for me. I think if you are going to change, you got to change very quickly. You got to change right away. And it obviously depends on what information you have. I think when they're there and they see that Leo and Jamal, who were there ahead of them, they're not even done yet, and then they see a team finish, like Colin and Christy finish, that's when you got to say, okay, if we're going to switch, we're going to do it now.
Yeah.
I think switching earlier is better, but once they're in this thing, and they might have one piece of bamboo off. It's like you don't know how close you are, so to just put it all away and kind of give up. I don't know. I see what you're saying because the other teams were finishing the paddling so quickly, but you've had that information for so long. If you're going to make that, if that's your reasoning, make that when the first team goes and does it quickly.
Yeah.
I'm with you here, though. This is another one where we have a detour where one is objective and one is subjective. I guess the irrigation also had an objective part too at the end where, okay, you have to fill this bucket up with water. That's objective. But if I'm running the race, I'm always going for the objective one. Like, go grab a fish trap, bring it back in a boat. Like, I know what I need to do. It's just going to take time. You're gonna do it. You can't get that wrong. And again, we see Tyler and Corey. They've always done this. They've always done the one that is objective, where you just need to get the thing done. There's no, well, you didn't tie this properly, or your rhythm was off, or your pronunciation was a little bit sideways. Not enough energy. Your singing wasn't energy. Whatever it is. I think that's the way to go with all of these. At least that's what I would do.
Yeah, because you're keeping it all in your hands. And when you're running a race, you want to have total control over everything, because you clearly don't have much control in the Amazing Race. So keep what you can under your control. And I think that's when you run the best race. And I think, Colin and Christy know that. I think Nicole and Victor have figured that out. Like, just do what you can to ensure that, like, it's all on you. It's not on somebody else or somebody else's perception of you. It's just you. And, I mean, when you look at, like, how some of these teams have finished, like, the teams that are kind of still figuring out, like Chris and Brett, 7th, 8th, 9th, finally get 3rd. Janelle and Brittany, 8th, 5th, 6th, 7th. Like, these are teams that are figuring out. Corinne and Eliza, 9th, 6th, 5th, 9th. These are teams that are like, they have not figured out, and unfortunately for Corinne and Eliza, they never will, what legs of the race you really should be doing, what portions you should be, like, what you should be focusing on and everything. Because the teams who, like Nicole and Victor, are very fast learners, and they have figured out, like, just do the objective challenges, just go, like, just get through them, just muscle through them. And that's the best way to really do that.
I think that, and this is after only watching one season, but it seems to me that is the way to go. And especially with this, like, man, that irrigation wheel, I take one look at that and I'm doing the other one. I'm whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but I'm doing the alternative to that because it looked complicated. And I wish the show had explained to me what this irrigation wheel does. I know it's used for the rice farms, but it was filling up that bucket of water at the end. Why don't you just dip that bucket into the ocean, river, or whatever that body of water was? Just dip the bucket in and it's filled up.
I don't think you were allowed to do that.
Elaborate. Well, of course you weren't allowed to, but I wish this just goes back to the cultural relevance. What is it that's so special about this wheel? I see that it's picking up water from this river, but there are many ways to pick up water out of a river. What is this wheel doing? And it's visually awesome. I'm going to have to do some of my own research, I guess, on the irrigation wheel and what it's all about. Because it's cool. Like, it's a cool way to get water. I don't know if building that is more efficient than just, like, getting a big bucket.
You should do a podcast on your research into the irrigation wheel. Everybody would love to listen to that, I'm pretty sure.
Well, maybe I'll do some research, and then next week I'll just present maybe 2 minutes of what I've found on the irrigation wheel.
I can't wait.
Because that, again, it's this wheel that looks cool. It has a lot of moving parts. It's hard to build. It splashes. There's noise. A lot of entertaining things coming from it. But what is the meaning of it? It's all about finding this meaning. That's where I at least get the most enjoyment out of these shows. And I don't know the meaning of the irrigation wheel other than that it looks cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is one. It just wasn't presented to us on the show.
I hear you. So just one more thing about this. Rachel had the line of the tie dropped in the ocean. Now we're going to have to go get another one. That to her was the ocean.
That's why I was just confused, because I was remembering, like, wait, someone did call it the ocean. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is a river, but maybe it's a river flowing into. I mean, I
know.
I think I just called it the sea or something. So
not the ocean, that's for sure.
I'm not gonna hit Rachel too hard here because I think I just made that same mistake. It's a body of water.
But anyway, so yeah, it's definitely a river. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that one out there. So we do this whole thing. We get down to the end. It's Corinne and Eliza versus Rachel and Alyssa.
Oh,
Rachel,
I'm still going here on.
Go do it because I don't have anything else to say.
You have nothing else to say. Well, I was gonna say this. Get a fish trap with 5 fish. All of them had 5 fish in them. There were no fish traps that had 4 fish, which I think would have been. I think stuff like that is really fun, where every team went and counted.
But I'll tell you why. Because if they pull it in though and they lose a fish, it's the Amazing Race's way of saying like you needed 5 fish, so go back and get another one because you only brought 4 back. So like you can lose a fish.
I like that too. I think any time where you're trying to trip these people up, I know they're in a small circular boat paddling. There's a lot of things that are in the way. But just a little more, okay, there might be a trap here that has no fish.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They were all counting their fish. It just seemed like this graphic was weird, like basket fish, that these check marks would come up. And I guess this was this only came up, I assume, because of what Christy and Colin did, where they dumped their fish and they didn't take the trap. And now it's like, okay, now we have to make it clear everyone has their fish, everyone has their trap. That was my only little thing. I think it would have been fun if there's a bunch of traps out there and, some of them have no fish, some of them have 3 fish, some of them have 4 fish. And then it's kind of like a scavenger hunt as well. What this also would do is if a team is far ahead, let's say, Colin and Christy are ahead, or Nicole and Victor, and then Brett and Chris come up, they grab a fish trap right away and it has 5, and then Nicole and Victor are still paddling around going through these fish traps trying to find. So you just add a little bit of a scavenger hunt to it. I know that's kind of luck based, but so was the whole flip-flop eating thing.
Yeah, true. It's true. I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was fine. Plus, it's kind of like if you're going to dump them out, it's causing you to dump them out and count them. And then if you lose one into the water, it's like, well, you better go find another basket with 5 fish. So I was, especially too, if you tip, I guess what it's really saying is like you tip the boat over and fish fall out of that trap. Well, now you have to go back and get another one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was okay with it. But yeah, I don't know. Like there wasn't too much to this one. I like Team Fun not being able to pick it up over the bridge. So they just like bring it to like the dead part and like bring it over the part where there's no railing. I thought that was cool. But really nothing much to this, except I really thought that Eliza and Corinne were ahead of Rachel and Alyssa. Did you think that too or no?
No, I didn't.
Well, I did.
So. It seems to me there's like this, this is the big moment on the show is, 2 teams, which one's going to get last place? And so far, the team that you thought was in last gets last place.
Yeah.
So far, at least.
But at least like from the way it was looking, it looked like Rachel and Alyssa were still working on it, looking over, and Corinne and Eliza were coming back.
Well, see, they were coming back. They were crossing the bridge.
Gotcha.
They weren't like, getting on the bridge to go run to wherever they were. They were still had to cross the bridge, paddle more, go to the fishmonger and give him the fish.
Yeah.
And by the time they gave him the fish, Rachel and Alyssa had left.
Yeah, exactly. And then so they do that. They're on their way to the finish mat. Leo and Jamal got lost for some reason. We don't know why. But Rachel.
No one took a cab to.
It said on foot.
Oh, it said, hey,
it said on foot. Yeah. So I guess that was their hint that it was close enough. But also it did say on foot. Corinne and Eliza lose to Rachel and Alyssa. What was most exciting to you? Was it just like them having to stand on the mat with Rachel and Alyssa and like pretend like it was okay that they just lost? Or was it when they went over to the side and Corinne is going like full Corinne mode on like The Amazing Race, on the people in it, on like the show in general? Like I loved it. But what was your favorite part, Will?
I don't know. I think they don't come off looking that good here. And if you're a Survivor fan, Corinne's personality, you get this. But I think I just wasn't a big fan of the negativity.
Funny.
And of course, Rachel and Alyssa are saying like we respect you. And I mean, it was it was some petty drama that it was fun, I guess, but I don't think coming out of this, I want the Survivor contestants to look good, and clearly, I don't think that's the case so far. We've lost 2 of the 3 Survivor teams already. We only have Chris and Brett left, and that's not to say Survivors aren't fit for the Amazing Race. I mean, they only picked a very small sample of Survivors, and I'm sure Rob and Amber have had success because I think I've heard about some of
Yeah,
their
they got
success.
second, I believe, on their season. So
yeah, but they're sad. I get it. It's like, what do you want? What do you want? I don't want to sit there loving this. I'm not eating this up.
Oh, I was.
And I know you were, but it's like, okay, like I get Corinne, I get Eliza, and they're frustrated. It's funny, I guess, but this is not why I'm watching The Amazing Race, to see pettiness, and I'm never talking to these people again. It's funny. I don't dislike it, but I wasn't,
I loved it.
You loved it. You hated it. That's fine.
This is Corinne and Eliza. This is why they were put on the show. Corinne was put onto The Amazing Race to be petty. And like in Corinne's seasons of Survivor, she was petty the entire time. I mean, if you go back and watch the Gabon Ponderosas, she like leads the charge for nobody to talk to Kenny and Crystal when they come into Ponderosa. And it's hilarious. Like, it's so ridiculous, but it's so petty. It's like you just played a game. You were the biggest like ass out of everybody, and you won't talk to these people. So I love, like, you know what? I'm glad that like Corinne is doing the same Corinne stuff. Like, I'm totally fine with it. I'm glad Eliza's still an emotional wreck. Like, they are still the same characters.
I'm glad to see it. But it seems like this was kind of your highlight of the episode.
No, it wasn't my highlight. I just think it's a great,
maybe it was
ending.
Because it was a weaker. Yeah, I think it was a good ending. It was very. I like how they were just there, kind of talking shit, and then the credits start rolling.
That's what I mean.
That was it. No, okay, yeah, I do like it as an ending. I don't think this was like the culmination of like, man, we were building to this amazing moment or anything like that, but. Yeah, it was fun, I guess.
And that's not what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm just saying I thought it was fun. Like,
my biggest disappointment is we didn't get to see Corinne and Eliza work with Tyler and Corey again.
I know.
And we will never see that. I think they had a really good alliance forming out of episode 3, and just that's how it goes.
Yeah, and something interesting here is that based on how everybody finished in the first leg of the race, so far, well, Art and JJ obviously eliminated in the first leg of the race, and they were 11th, so Rupert and Laura finished 10th in the first leg of the race, and they got 10th. Corinne and Eliza finished 9th in the first leg of the race, and they got 9th. And Janelle and Brittany got 8th in the first leg of the race, and I could definitely see Janelle and Brittany going home next week in 8th place. So it could be interesting.
An interesting trend.
Very interesting. And first place. So here you go.
Animals. So maybe they had Afghanimals win the season.
Afghanimals were first. Colin and Christy were second. Tyler and Corey were third. I'd buy all of that.
What about Victor and Nicole?
They were 6th. I think that they move up. I just think what's going to end up hurting Victor and Nicole is that as the race continues on, they're going to learn the race, but they're going to be stuck with the best Amazing Race teams. And if you get to like final 5, final 6, whatever it is, there's really nowhere to hide anymore. So yeah, they've been finishing second every time, but as these challenges start to get a little bit more serious, a little bit harder, you can't, like, finishing 5th is no longer good. Finishing 5th means you go home. Finishing 6th means you go home. And, they finished 6th in the first leg, which is fine. I just think that, like, Tyler and Corey have gotten every bad break you could possibly get this season, and they still, like, finished 5th this week. And even on the week when they got U-turned, they finished 7th. Like, I still think Tyler and Corey, like, have yet to have a great leg and have been doing well. Team Fun, I think, could really turn it on and beat them at any moment. The only Amazing Race team I don't see beating them ever, which, because they're kind of a big brother team, is Rachel and Alyssa, who finished 4th in leg 1, and they will not finish 4th on the Amazing Race this season. So nobody worry about that. I don't see them getting much further in this just because they don't work that well together. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I don't see them doing that well. One more note. I don't know if you paid attention to this, but their interviews are clearly done after the race.
That's obviously.
It's the only time they could be done. And that often happens on these shows. But I could tell from Chris and Brett's energy and smiles that they weren't the eliminated team. Did you read into that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of learned that from the Amazing Race. They always do the post. It's always post. It's either right before they start the leg or right after they start the leg. So you can judge how people are doing, if they're happy, if they're not happy, because they probably tell them, like, try to be as even keeled as possible. But it's really hard when you know you're not going home, and it's really hard to be happy when you know you are going home. I mean, there's been a couple times where, like, you're watching and the people who are talking are absolutely miserable, and you're like, they're going home this week.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If you have the team so clearly that lost, if they're so unhappy, you can't really show that interview. But then if you're showing only interviews of teams that didn't get eliminated, then you're saying you're just checking off, okay, this team doesn't go home. Every team that, has an interview. So, that's a tough issue there. And I hadn't noticed it until this episode.
Yeah.
And I hope I don't read into it more, but they were so chipper. And they were talking about this polar bear. They had big smiles on their face. Like this was clearly a team that had not just been eliminated.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I've noticed that. I mean, you noticed that from watching The Amazing Race. And if you look into it, you can figure out who's eliminated each week. But I try not to look into it too much because
I don't want to.
Yeah, it's too obvious. So how do you think, since now they're the last team left, what do you think about Chris and Brett's chances? What do you think their ceiling is?
Well, what they have going for them is I don't think anyone's going to use a U-turn or I don't even know what else you can do, but a U-turn. I don't think they are going to get hit by any other team. And that's kind of all they've got going for them. It's tough because you have a lot of these Amazing Race teams that I just don't see losing. They've already finished last in a leg. We know they're capable of coming upon a competition that they just can't do. And I think that's a big part of this thing where, like, Corinne and Eliza, they get to this moped thing and Corinne is saying, I would have done worse. I'm not even mad. And I would, because the whole time I was thinking, man, why is Eliza doing this? If she is she was afraid of, like, the noise, like just the sound and the size and the speed and this, like, big, she was afraid of the damn thing. So I'm thinking, if she's so afraid, why didn't Corinne at least give it a go? And she said she went worse. Who knows if that's true? But it seems like you just arrive at these things and you don't, like, either you can do it or you can't. And Chris and Brett, we've said this before, they have similar skill sets. I don't think they're that different enough from each other where, okay, you'd be really good at this and I'd be really good at this. It's like, okay, pick one person to go and they're going to offer the same talents. Where I think these other teams like Colin and Christy, Team Fun, it seems like they have a good balance of who's good at what, and they can decide immediately, okay, this is something that's more your speed. Tyler and Corey, for example, Corey knew this is my challenge with the bike. So I want to see them to continue to be on the show, but for that reason, my prospects are not high.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the best they can do, I don't think they make it into the final leg of the race. So I think the best they can do is fourth. I just hope that they don't go home this Wednesday, considering it's the Survivor finale. Although I guess they aren't actually, there won't be an Amazing Race episode this week because the Survivor finale will be on till 11. So there won't even be an Amazing Race episode this week.
Well, I got a lot of time for my irrigation research.
That just makes me happy because even when Survivor goes off the air, that means that we won't have to, that means Brett and Chris won't also go off the air the same week. So at least we'll have somebody from Survivor on our TVs for a little bit. So I guess we won't actually be back until 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, wow.
And then we can actually start doing it like right after the episode because Survivor's not on anymore.
True. I was looking forward to the Amazing Race almost as much as I was looking forward to Survivor this week.
Yeah, dude, I'm going to stop broadcast now while you have to say, like, I don't want to listen to that. Don't say those things. Although the Amazing Race has been fun. There's no way it's better than.
No, well, the main reason I was so excited was because of this, continued leg of the race where they're going to have these start times and how will Chris and Brett be able to fight back. And that all went away quickly. Bring it full circle here.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Do you have anything else to say?
No, I'm still enjoying the show. Definitely want to see a more fair race. It feels a little bit cheapened, and I think the reasons you brought up, I was bringing up my complaints, and then you were kind of explaining why.
Mhm.
And it's that we have, these kind of celebrities from other shows, and it's not the authentic version. I hope that's the case. And I hope that as we dwindle down the number of teams, it becomes more serious, and it becomes like the game becomes more serious. I'm totally good with the silly challenges. I just wish there were consequences for getting like last place in an episode. It didn't feel like they had many consequences at all. So that's my only kind of issue, but loving it, enjoying it.
Yeah,
having fun.
I agree with all that. So we'll be back in 2 weeks then with more Amazing Race content. Alexa and I will be back on Sunday with Intern to talk about Survivor finale. And otherwise, that's it. Go follow us at Survivor Specialists on Twitter, on Instagram, same thing. And that's really it, because you guys don't want to be patrons of us. So see you in 2 weeks, anybody who's only here for the Amazing Race. See you in 2 days for people who are Survivor fans.